Hi, Peter, Mary. So we are going to do a first little video about your journey in life and why it interests you. And then we will focus on what is actually interesting you very much. It is virtual reality. So perhaps one or two words about your life and your journey and why are you interested by virtual reality?
Well, I guess I've always been interested since the late teens in what could we really do to improve the world that we're living in, essentially, is the most fundamental question. And how can we make the greatest possible impact with the least amount of effort? And that's not from a perspective of being lazy, but from a perspective of understanding the complexity of the challenges we're facing and the speed at which change is happening, and the need for us to actually make interventions as quickly as we can to help a transition into a more sustainable world, essentially. And the most recent project that I've been involved in is thinking about how we can use education to that end. In the context of a world where the content that students are often taught in the universities, in high schools, is less relevant to what's actually going on in the world. So how do we make sure that people are taught to bring a critical mind to what's happening in the world, to begin to see things through a new lens, and to develop the qualities and competencies that are really going to make them effective change makers or positive contributors to the world as it is right now. That means we need to understand the kind of change context we're in right now, which is a non-linear emergent change context, very different to a stable kind of development. And the kind of education that is needed in that kind of context is quite different to the way education emerged essentially out of the Industrial Revolution. So we need a new form of learning that will help people develop the qualities and competencies that are relevant and adequate to the challenges that we're facing. So I've been working on that for the last few years as Chief Innovation Officer at Ubiguity University, which is essentially a digital-first learning and innovation platform. And when we thought about the design challenge of if we were to start from scratch to create a kind of learning experience that would be really relevant for today, what would it need to be composed of? We came up with three main elements. Obviously, the stuff we need to study and learn about, the different situations we're in. There is, but the quality of how somebody shows up in the world, the impact they make, is not just to do with what they know. It's about how they develop themselves as a person, the multiple intelligences that they bring. So we then added a second component that we called self-mastery, which is really about the interior development of the student. And the third element, which is ultimately what it's all about, is what we call missions, which are hands-on change projects. So the combination of engaging the world and trying to affect positive change, learning stuff that's relevant and working on yourself so that you become more effective was the kind of pedagogical design behind Ubiguity. Now,
that makes me very much think about Peter Senge network of knowledge. Do you have some link with them or what?
Yes, and in fact, Peter Senge, with a colleague, wrote a book recently, actually a year or so after we'd come up with that design, essentially saying, you need to have these three core elements in education. So it's obviously something that's alive at the moment. But then, if you're wanting to have global reach, so you're wanting to reach people who wouldn't normally have access to education, you're wanting to keep it affordable, then the way to do that, obviously the online technologies provide that possibility, because you can do it at scale and you can give people access globally. But the question is, how do you create really transformational learning that sticks and that really works on more than just an information level, using online context? And up until now, the online learning has often just been about content delivery. So, you show people videos and things, maybe they do a quiz or two. So we went a step beyond that and we created a kind of Facebook for change makers. So the learning platform is a community. So you feel like you belong.
It is your actual platform on Ubiguity University.
Yeah, that's the current platform, and people are very enthusiastic about it because it really is about the collaboration and the creativity rather than just sitting there and consuming material. It feels like a place you want to be and you want to belong. But still, it's still a kind of 2D screen, you know, that you're engaging with. And one of the big challenges in online education is retention, you know, keeping people engaged and excited. And I've still had my questions about, well, how do you really get to those other aspects of people's development beyond just the cognitive? And as I started to discover the world of virtual reality, it made me realize that, okay, here's a possibility to be able to give people access to education online using the virtual reality context. And I'd say that the moment that I got that realization was when I was at our Chief Technology Officer's house in Berkeley, and he had one of the first development kits of Oculus Rift, which is a bit like this, a headset essentially, but it plugs into a computer. And when you put it on, it immerses you in a different world. So you look around and you're seeing another reality around you. And he had one of the very first kind of pieces of software that they used with the Oculus, which was a roller coaster. So I was just sitting on a chair in his dining room, but put this thing on and went on this roller coaster ride. And my whole body, mind, believed I was on that roller coaster. My whole body responded as if I was really on a roller coaster, where I wasn't. I was sitting in his room. And it suddenly made me realize what the possibilities were for a more embodied approach to learning using the online technologies of virtual reality. So from that moment on, I've been trying to find out how we could take this emerging technology, which is really going to explode, particularly in the next year. You know, the first.
Why? Because that is a good question. It is actually the fact that this is quite cheap, and this everybody has this, and you can put this inside, and then you have virtual reality with two tools, which is quite. This one everybody have it, and this one is what. €100 or even...
And this one is even cheaper. I mean, actually, the New York Times sent out the Google Cardboard viewers to all their readers for free recently. And they could download and look at a news story of Syria, which immersed them actually in the situation as if they were actually in Syria, which is a very different experience than just reading about it in the newspaper or even watching it on the TV screen. So it really made me see that in terms of motivating people and activating their empathy to act, that kind of experience is more likely to inspire them to action than, let's say, watching it on a 2D TV screen or reading it in the newspaper. And on the other hand, the ability to really develop whole person competencies that aren't just about cognitive, but are also your emotional intelligence, your other senses. The ability to do that is greatly enhanced using the virtual reality context, because you do actually feel you're there, and your body and your mind respond as if you're there. And then the ability to collaborate with people in those kind of environments is enhanced, because it's one thing to kind of have a Facebook group with little heads and things there, but to be able to have the people in front of you and be working with them together and talking to them in those environments from all over the world is the other possibility. So really, inspiration and motivation, education at a deeper level, and collaboration is what this technology is really going to unleash, I think, at a level we can't even see and understand right now.
So we are going to explore in the next video more about those possibilities. Thank you, Peter, for this introductive video.
No, thank you, Michel. Very welcome.